Welcome to Confessions by Banana Ketchup. 5 weeks of terror. This is going to be a long read. I'm giving a lot of context because since it is a big decision I need help with, I want to give as many details as possible. I recently found a job in a nearby town, but it is far enough that I had to move because it was not possible to drive to work every day. I live with my girlfriend, and since I wasn't so sure about this job opportunity, I first went alone for a week to try it out, before making a more definitive decision about moving. One of the reasons that made me come was that when I told my employer that I lived far enough so I would have to move, he mentioned a place I could stay for really cheap, that was conveniently close to work and belonged to a friend of his. So I got the number and called the guy. And it was indeed cheap, considering where it's located and the size of it. Before my first day of work, I met the landlord and we went to see the place. The apartment is really big and right next to my workplace. The only drawbacks are that it seems to be a fairly old building with 4 floors, one for each apartment, and it has no elevators. Since I live on the last floor, it is a reasonable amount of stairs. When I went inside for the first time, I only saw a huge empty apartment with absolutely no furniture. It has 4 bedrooms, all of different sizes. The kitchen is huge and the living room is even bigger. The only thing that bothered me at first was that the ceiling is fairly low, but I guess that's a common thing in an old buildings. My landlord had nothing special about him other that he asked me if I could stay in a hotel for the first night because he needed to get things ready before my arrival. So I did that. But when I moved in on my second day, it seemed like everything was exactly the same, so I don't know why he had asked me to wait. My first week went by fast. I would arrive home always tired, and since I only had the sleeping bag and my suitcase with me, I mostly slept or stayed on my phone when I was home. The job is nice and it pays well, considering how little I spend on rent, so after pondering for some time, I decided to stay and moved in for real with my girlfriend and some furniture. She works from home, so moving would not be much of a problem to her. My girlfriend and I were excited to adventure ourselves in a new place, with all different people and things to do, so our first week together went well and nothing could be more perfect. Things started to get weird on week 3, when we had finished setting up a net on the balcony to prevent the cat from jumping out. So when everything was ready, we brought him in. He's usually chill, but the moment we opened his cat carrier inside the apartment, he would not come out and would seem really stressed and agitated. For the following days, he would spend most of his time inside his carrier, and according to my girlfriend, he would only get out on rare occasions and would stay close to her all the time, not even exploring the surroundings. On week 3, I also met a neighbor on the stairs one day, and he made a joke about how people would always be moving in and out of my apartment. Which later I found out one of my co-workers had stayed there for a short period of time, but wouldn't give me a straight answer on why he left. Shortly after that, my girlfriend started giving signs that something wasn't right. She would have humor changes and would act weird in some occasions. Eventually, she started messaging me to come home immediately from work because she did not felt good while home alone, even though she's used to because of her job. I suggested her to take her computer and go work somewhere else, like a cafe or park during the day. But she said she did not want to leave the cat alone, which is something he seemed to like before, but not anymore. At first, her complaints were reasonable, but quickly started to sound a little bizarre. First, she told me the apartment was suffocating and would lack sunlight during the day, and that it would be cold at all times. Then, it quickly progressed to an absolute terror of being alone inside. One day, she brought our sofa to the balcony and would stay there with the cat all day, only coming inside when I got home. At first, I thought her change of behavior was due to the fact that we were in a new town and everything about our routine had changed, but the deterioration of her situation was quick, and from week 4 to week 5, things were already getting out of control. Also, around that time, I started getting extremely tired and kind of sick frequently. Sore limbs, headaches, and difficulty to sleep. Obviously, that deeply affected our relationship, and it culminated in a bad argument in one weekend while we were at my parents' house in my hometown. After that, she cried a lot and finally opened up, stating things that I would never have thought she would say in a serious manner, like that she would see shadows constantly and hear weird animal-like sounds coming from the empty bedrooms. Even though I lived there too, besides feeling kind of sick and tired, I had never experienced such things. And I even started to think it had something to do with depression or simply loneliness. I asked her to give it one more chance, and she agreed to come back with me on the condition that we would leave the cat with my parents for a while, since at this point he had almost stopped eating. It was beginning of week 5 when on the first Wednesday of coming back without the cat, she woke up screaming in the middle of the night, saying that she suddenly opened her eyes and saw someone standing on our doorstep. I quickly stood up and searched around the apartment and found nothing. But at that moment, I got deeply creeped out when I realized our room door was completely open and we always leave it closed, especially because of the circumstances. And our room door really clicks, and it is not possible that it would have opened by itself. After that, she started crying a lot, and I had to take her by car to her parents' house in our hometown in the middle of the night and come back so I could go to work the next day. This all happened last week. Since then, she has stayed with her parents and I went back alone to our apartment. What happened that night changed the way I saw things, because no matter what, I couldn't come up with a logical explanation for the door being open like that. Then it started to affect me. The next days I spent there alone started to make me feel really uncomfortable. I would be really tired all of the time, and the only thing that would give me courage to go back home would be an extreme urge to sleep. I started to be afraid of my own place. For 2 or 3 days, the only things I did were work and sleep. I barely ate, and it seemed like it was all part of a long dream, which I couldn't wake up. Then came the events of the 27th of October. 2 nights ago, I went back home after work as usual, and I felt extremely tired, so I just ate a sandwich and went to bed. That was around 7:30 p.m. The weather was clear and there was no sign of rain or strong wind. At around 9:30 p.m., I woke up really thirsty and having a little trouble to breathe, so I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water, and before I could go back to sleep, I noticed the window of my room was completely open. I always leave it closed and there was no wind that day as far as I remember. But since I was kind of sleepy, I didn't think much of it and I just closed the window and went directly back to sleep. Sometime after that, I woke up again, but this time I felt something I had never felt before, a really uncomfortable feeling, almost as if I was being held by something. Once again, I stood up and noticed the window was open again. As I closed it, I felt really afraid and I thought to myself that I'm an adult man and what was happening was ridiculous and I would probably feel very silly in the morning. Then it happened. I woke up again in the middle of the night, probably around 3 or 4 in the morning, and this time I felt something really heavy over my body, and as soon as I opened my eyes, I saw the silhouette of a creature like something. I don't know exactly, but it was over my torso and pressing my body against the bed. I couldn't distinguish it very well because it was dark, but I started to scream really loud, and after a moment I managed to wake up and turn the lights on. As soon as I saw the window was open once again, I felt great terror and desperation and literally ran downstairs to the garage and got inside the car. I left the building and started to drive around to try to calm down. After some time, I decided to not go back there that night, so I went to the hotel I had stayed in on my first night. I only went back there yesterday morning to grab a few things, and I've been staying in the hotel since. I'm still really confused about all of this and thinking a lot because leaving that apartment means leaving my job, because otherwise it isn't worth staying in this town if I have to spend 2/3 of my salary on rent. This is a serious decision with real-life consequences, and I want to be sure about what I'm doing. Neither I or my family have never been religious, spiritual, and I don't personally know anyone that I could talk to about this issue while being sincere, because this is a completely new aspect of life that I had never considered before or even thought it was real, to be honest. This is why I posted this here, to see if I could get some light in this subject. Thank you, Arturo Uniel, the author. Thank you for watching, everyone. If you already haven't, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any new episodes. See you again soon, and until then, please, be safe.